Here's the paradox that no one is saying out loud. The most powerful military on Earth just issued a 48-hour ultimatum to a country that has nothing left to lose. And that asymmetry, that brutal imbalance, is precisely what makes this moment so dangerous. I've spent years studying how ultimatums work in history. The ones that end in war are not the ones where both sides are strong. They're the ones where one side is cornered. And right now, Iran is cornered. The thesis of what I'm about to tell you is this. What looks like a negotiating tactic from Washington may have already crossed a threshold that neither side can walk back from. Not because of what Trump said, but because of what other powers are quietly calculating in response. Let me take you inside the mechanism. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide choke point at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. Through that narrow passage flows roughly 20% of all the oil traded globally every single day. 20%. Think of it this way. If someone put a single lock on 1/5 of the world's energy supply, that lock is the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has had the key for decades. Trump's statement, "All hell will rain down if the strait is not open by Monday," is not a new idea from Washington. American administrations have warned Iran about Hormuz for 40 years. What is new is the 48-hour window. That compression of time is either a brilliant bluff designed to force a negotiation, or it is the kind of deadline that generates miscalculation. Here's what the historical record shows. In 1988, the United States and Iran fought a brief, undeclared naval war in the Persian Gulf. Iran had mined shipping lanes. The U.S. responded with Operation Praying Mantis, destroying nearly half of Iran's operational naval fleet in a single day. Iran backed down. But 1988 was a different world. Iran's military was weakened by 8 years of war with Iraq. Its proxies were not yet the regional network they are today, and China was not yet purchasing 90% of Iran's oil exports. That last point is the one the mainstream coverage is almost entirely ignoring. This is not a confrontation between two parties. The moment Washington issued this ultimatum, 3 other capitals started running their own calculations: Beijing, Moscow, and Riyadh. Beijing imports more oil through the Strait of Hormuz than any other country on Earth. Any disruption to that flow is not an abstraction for China. It is an immediate economic crisis. China has not publicly sided with Iran, but it has not condemned Iran either. And behind closed doors, the question Chinese strategists are asking is not whether to support Tehran, but how much ambiguity serves their interests right now. Moscow's calculus is different. A spike in oil prices caused by Hormuz instability directly benefits Russian export revenues. Every dollar added to the global price of crude is, in the current environment, a dollar that partially offsets the impact of Western sanctions. Russia has every structural incentive for this crisis to simmer, not to explode, but to simmer. And Riyadh? Saudi Arabia sits in a nearly impossible position. The kingdom depends on Hormuz for its own oil exports. A closure hurts Riyadh too, but Saudi Arabia also benefits from higher prices if the threat alone keeps markets anxious. The Saudis are publicly aligned with Washington, but they are not eager for a regional war that could send missiles toward their own infrastructure. Here's what that means in concrete terms. This ultimatum did not land in a vacuum. It landed inside a geopolitical structure where 3 major powers, China, Russia, and a nervous Gulf bloc, all have reasons to either prolong the ambiguity or, in specific scenarios, provide Iran with just enough cover to not fully comply. Now let's talk about what Iran can actually do. Iran's military doctrine for the Strait is not about fighting and winning a conventional war against the United States. No serious Iranian strategist believes that is possible. The doctrine is about cost imposition. Iran's strategy is to make closing the strait painful enough for global markets and politically costly enough for Washington that the U.S. calculates the price of action is too high. Iran's naval assets include a large fleet of fast attack craft, shore-based anti-ship missiles, submarine capability, and the ability to lay mines at scale. None of these can stop an American carrier strike group. All of them can complicate commercial shipping for weeks or months. And complicating shipping, even for a few weeks, has consequences that reach your life directly, at the gas station, in the prices of goods transported globally, in the volatility of every pension fund that holds energy stocks. The unintended consequences of this ultimatum are already in motion, regardless of how the next 48 hours unfold. Markets have already priced in risk, shipping insurers have already raised premiums on vessels transiting the Gulf, and every country that depends on that oil flow, which includes most of Asia, parts of Europe, and the Gulf states themselves, is recalculating their exposure. What does this mean for the ordinary person watching this? This is not a war happening somewhere far away that doesn't affect your daily life. The price of fuel, the cost of goods, the stability of financial markets, all of these are connected to what happens in a 21-mile stretch of water between Oman and Iran. History has shown us, repeatedly, that the crises that most affect ordinary people are not the dramatic explosions shown on news channels. They are the slow pressure applied to global supply chains over months and years. There are 4 scenarios from here, and none of them are clean. In the first, Iran makes a partial gesture, a symbolic opening, a diplomatic back-channel message, and Washington accepts it as compliance, allowing both sides to step back. This is the most likely short-term outcome, but it resolves nothing structurally. In the second, Iran does not comply. The U.S. conducts a limited military strike on Iranian naval assets, and Iran retaliates asymmetrically, not by closing the strait completely, but through proxy actions in Iraq, Yemen, or Lebanon. A slow burn that lasts months and keeps energy markets in sustained anxiety. In the third scenario, a miscalculation, an accidental engagement between naval forces, a misidentified vessel, a panicked commander, escalates faster than any political leadership intended. This is how wars have started before, not by decision, but by accident at the edge of a tense standoff. And in the fourth scenario, the most underreported one, China and Russia increase their material and diplomatic support to Iran, not openly, but enough to signal to Washington that any military action will carry geopolitical costs beyond the Gulf itself. This transforms a bilateral ultimatum into a multilateral crisis. The question I want to leave with you is this. When you hear a leader say, "All hell will rain down," the real question is not whether they mean it. The real question is, who else is listening, and what they are quietly deciding to do about it. Because the history of the Strait of Hormuz is not a history of 2 countries. It is a history of a choke point that the entire world depends on. And the decisions being made right now about that choke point will not be made in Washington or Tehran alone.